Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. Across the country last week, producers continued getting their 2025 crops in the ground and preparing for any challenges they could run into. And that's the topic for this week's Agronomy for Your Acres with our friends from Nutrien Ag Solutions. Nutrien recently cut the ribbon on a new innovation farm outside Champaign, Illinois. And joining me now is Thaddeus Bates. He's a senior manager of applied agronomy. And Thaddeus, why is Nutrien spending the money on these innovation farms? How do they help growers?
We consider ourselves a collaboration area. We're working with our growers, we're working with our suppliers. We have a global connection across the board. So we know technology's advancing at a very accelerating rate. We have to stay up to times for our growers and for our business.
I've heard the phrase research at the speed of farming in my conversations with folks from Nutrien Ag Solutions. What does that mean in the context of this sort of investment?
For sure. So research at the speed of farming is a play on words, if you will. We don't do any R&D here. What we do is we pick up where R&D leaves off, and we work with our cooperators, our basic suppliers to, we'll say, get it across the finish line. So we're looking at products 3 years before they receive a label. We're working with our suppliers. That helps the suppliers get the products into the market quicker and helps us understand how they're going to react and work within the environment that they're going to be living in.
That's incredible. So it's real-time research of real products that could be used on the farm. ET3P. Those are 4 letters and numbers. What do they mean, and why is that a phrase that's important to the folks at Nutrien Ag Solutions?
So I've had to answer the question, what do you do there, quite often? And this is the easiest way that I've developed it. So ET3P came out of the things and the levers that we get to pull in agriculture. So we look at equipment, we look at technology, we look at products, we look at practices, and most important, we look at people. That equation is different for every farm that we work with here at Nutrien Ag Solutions. We know that budgets are different at every farm. We know that manpower is different at every farm. We know that acres are different at every farm. So we take that equation, we apply it to each grower. That helps us understand what the best solution is. With that, we have the bookends of the soil lab with Waypoint, and then we also have our weather team located here in Champaign that help us contribute to those ET3P decisions.
Really strengthening all of those pillars that keep a farm in operation. Now, one of the things I've heard a lot about is machine-enabled agronomy. I understand this is that combination of tech and equipment. What does that mean, and what's coming?
So machine-enabled agronomy is all the components of the data and how it flows from piece to piece and how we can become more efficient. For one good example, we're looking at how we can replicate passes from our planter pass into our sprayer to make sure we're staying off of the crop, keeping the crop up and moving. That way we can reduce fatigue on our operators, making that first pass around the field and making sure that we make the most accurate application on those acres.
That makes sense. Now, Thaddeus, I'd like to take a step back. Look at Nutrien Ag Solutions' broad approach to innovation, and how do you think it sets it apart from others in the space?
So what we've taken, I guess the best example, I'm going to make this real extreme probably for you, but it took 30 years for electricity to reach 10% of the nation once it became available. It took 5 years for tablets to penetrate that same amount of market. So in 30 years, we've exponentially increased the speed at which we can get back out to our consumers, and that's coming to us faster and faster every year. So we have to start looking out further to understand what technology is going to be available to us sooner, is basically what I'm getting at.
That is a fantastic point. To be on the cutting edge, you have to know where the cutting edge is for technology, equipment, and people. Thaddeus Bates, Senior Manager for Applied Agronomy, thank you so much for speaking with us this week.
Mike, thanks for the time today.
And folks, if you'd like to learn more, you can visit nutrienagsolutions.com. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Stay up to speed with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. And this week, we're getting the insight from Naomi Bloom. She's a senior market advisor with Total Farm Marketing. And Naomi, thanks for talking with us this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We continue to see these markets moving up and down and back and forth. Naomi, here in this old crop corn market, what's your advice to producers who maybe still have a little bit extra to unload?
Well, I would actually say be patient for just a little bit, but remember, we are in the window where we are going to likely see our summer price rally over the next few weeks. History has told us that the summer high a lot of times will occur between Mother's Day and Father's Day. And with Mother's Day behind us and prices were at their lower end at that price point, we're starting to see the market rally. So I think there's opportunity ahead. We've got plenty of weather to trade. We've got great export sales for old crops still. And I think that there's a little bit more that the market can work higher. But again, a lot of times that rally is over and done with around Father's Day. So be on your toes and make sure you're ready to capitalize on those old crop cash sales and start thinking about new crop sales too.
Are there any price levels on the old crop side as you're watching out for folks to be patient that we should maybe get a little bit more aggressive at if we hit them?
Yeah, looking at the July corn chart, to me, it looks like we could see 480 as a very realistic price target for the futures price. And if we can push on through there, we'll be right back up near that $5 level. But $5 will be a significant psychological and technical point to have to try to get through on charts. So it would take a major weather scare to justify prices to go above $5. So be thinking and get ready to do some sales between the 480 to the $5 area based on July futures.
Same question. Looking at the new crop instead, we've got smaller corn acres coming on the line, larger corn acres. Naomi, do we want to be doing some unloading here in the near term?
So same concept. So over the next few weeks is going to be your opportunity. December corn is now back in the uptrend and is approaching what is going to be the major resistance area near 475. 475 is significant. It would be the top near the 2-year downtrend line. And we're going to be watching weather there. Now, with old crop demand being so strong, that makes the carry in for the new crop lower because of the lower old crop ending stocks. And so now we are also set up for a weather market for corn. And the market is very concerned as of the most recent crop progress report. We still have about 26% of the Illinois crop to get in the ground. We have 60% approximately of the Ohio crop to get in the ground. And with all the rain that we saw over the Midwest this week, it's going to be tricky to just get that crop planted a little bit more. So I think we'll see some support coming off of the Memorial Weekend holiday. And again, demand has just been fantastic for both exports and ethanol numbers for old crop, new crop corn.
You know, looking at reasons or at least tailwinds for a corn rally here, the wheat market has also been on the uptrend. Naomi, have we put the low in wheat?
I think the low is behind us, and we have some possibility of this market to move a little bit higher. It's drier in the Black Sea region. There's still concerns about the quality of the crop in Kansas with the disease that could be there. And now in Illinois, they're kind of concerned about the wetness that's been there, that it could lead to scab issues or disease issues in Illinois in the coming weeks because of how wet it's been. But the bright shining star with wheat was this week's weekly export sales with just a huge number for new crop wheat. So U.S. wheat has been determined as cheap and good value. Global wheat still on sale. And we have a lot of production potential concerns to get through in the entire Northern Hemisphere over the next couple months.
All right, lots to watch in these markets, and we'll be back with more discussion with Naomi Bloom of Total Farm Marketing after this. Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Stay up to speed with these volatile commodity markets at farmfutures.com. And joining us this week is Naomi Bloom, Senior Market Advisor with Total Farm Marketing. And Naomi, you were talking there about the lack of planting of corn across the eastern corn belt. Ohio's behind, Illinois is behind. Could this lead to more soy acreage as we get deeper into summer?
Well, that is definitely a question the market is starting to ponder. We still have some of those corn planting dates that push into June, so there's time to get the corn in the ground. But there is that possibility that because of the soggy weather, we might end up with more soybean acres. And, you know, on the soybean side, we were about 65% planted last week. And the thing to really be aware of, in my opinion, is how North Dakota is half planted and about a third of South Dakota needs to get planted yet. Now, those are the beans that are so important to the export industry. They go out the PNW and potentially head to China. So we want to keep an eye on the weather conditions in those two states. And soybeans in general, we have tight ending stocks for old crop. And because of the lower acres, the potential for tight ending stocks for new crops. So we have to keep weather watching for soybeans. Keep an eye on any biofuel mandates that might come through the news. And of course, we're keeping an eye on trade initiatives with China. And the thing with China that I'm watching the most would be the weather in their country, which has been on the drier side, especially for wheat and some of their soybean growing regions. And so if they have a tough summer for weather, I think we're going to see China come to the table a little sooner for some trade negotiation deals because they've got to feed their people.
All right, lots to watch there on the soy side. So much of that market, at least over the summer, is going to be determined by headlines. Naomi, let's talk dairy production. We've got milk at $19.50. Is this an expansion point for the industry?
Well, what's interesting is that we just had a milk production report come out this week, and April milk production was up 1.5%. That's a pretty big jump, and they also revised the March number a little bit higher as well. We have more dairy cows now, 89,000 more than a year ago, so that's part of the reason for the production increase. So milk prices had a good rally over the past few weeks based on strong demand for cheese, and just that our products on the global scale are a little bit cheaper than other countries, so we saw some decent export demand. But now with this milk production report out showing bigger numbers, the market might be at a little bit of a point of pause. So we're going to be looking forward to see how cold storage report comes out, to see how cheese production is coming out and where that demand is, both domestically and globally.
Before we let you go, Naomi Bloom, livestock, live cattle, feeder cattle, do we still have room to run with this rally?
Well, that's the big question. And so with the cattle complex, we still have those very, very large bearish Q reversals from last week on both the live cattle and feeder cattle charts. And it's been a pretty quiet week for trading news. And so we saw cautious trade all week long, and we're going to be getting a feel for the cattle on feed numbers that are going to be out here recently very soon, and try to see if there's any numbers that are showing signs of maybe holding back heifers for breeding, or if there's going to be signs of herd expansion. And we're keeping a tight eye on consumer demand. So it's going to be touch and go here as we head into the summer holiday grilling season, and to see if the consumer is actually still willing to keep up with purchasing beef. Now, at the cheaper cuts, definitely strong demand. But on those higher cuts, that's what we're going to be watching.
Lots to watch as this summer unfolds. Naomi Bloom, Senior Market Advisor with Total Farm Marketing, thanks so much for speaking with us this week.
Thank you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, Greg's been keeping an eye on the weather across the country. And Greg, over in the Pacific Northwest, what should those folks expect to see next week?
Yeah, as opposed to the middle part of the country, the heartland, which has been rocked and socked with severe and heavy rainfall. Pretty quiet, docile setup into the northwestern part of the country. Beginning to see in the upper level charts the at least western flank of the drier to drought-ridden weather pattern going across the Plain States and Corn Belt locales down the line here in the next couple of weeks. A stray shower into western Washington, warmth across the Rogue River Basin. Downstream, we do have a weak weather system, kind of the dividing line of warmer air here, warmer here than it is over the southeastern states and southern Corn Belt, and the heat that is building into the northern Great Basin and Intermountain West. And by and large, this weather system kind of stays put. Upper level winds begin to swing in more from the southwest, and that will drive a couple of rain showers into parts of the Pacific Northwest. Light amounts there. The heat builds up across Big Sky country where there's been significant dryness and drought relief. There's heat here across the central Rockies, Great Basin, and even into the Plain States with, again, a couple of stray showers into some of the spring grain areas of the Dakotas. Opportunities to get out there and assess things coming off the spells of either severe weather or heavy rainfall or cold or snow. You've seen it all there the past few weeks. Meanwhile, it's a pretty seasonal weather pattern across the west and southwest. Heat across the valley locales. Boy, they had some of those heat advisories into the southern Sacramento Valley, up around 100 degrees there the past week. And that's that June swoon of low cloudiness coastal areas from about San Francisco on southward. Meanwhile, a couple of showers and thunderstorms across parts of the winter wheat belt. We've seen some modest improvement to dryness and drought there. Just plain old seasonal hot weather across the Four Corners area. Likely to stay there, build a little farther north. Later in the week, the dividing line, this thermal low stays into the valleys of California, and outside of a stray shower thunderstorm into the high plains, Mike, it is a pretty quiet setup across the southwestern reaches of the country.
You mentioned the big rains last week across the central parts of the country. Do they see a dry down next week?
It is. It's a quieter weather picture evolving from northwest to southeast, but a nippy one, as was the case last week. Some patchy frost again early in the week, Red River Valley of the north into parts of the upper Midwest. Here is the last of these prolific wet weather system areas that generate more rainfall and probably some standing water in the fields. And these are cold grounds as well, so we'll see what transpires. In any event, this boundary is here. Still some upper level low pressure spinning through the Great Lakes region. A couple of showers here. It's still cool in the eastern part of the Corn Belt. Seasonal temperatures west beginning to see the heat build into parts of Big Sky country. That'll be working in from northwest to southeast here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And again, some patchy frost into parts of the northwestern Corn Belt. This wet weather system dragging showers and thunderstorms down through Dixie, well watered down Oklahoma City, Dallas, Fort Worth, Wichita on points eastward. We do get into some cooler, drier air into the southern plains as the heat builds across the southwest per usual. That's the dividing line of heat across the southwest, warming into the central plains, and a couple of showers and thunderstorms still heavy and severe across the immediate Gulf Coast area, banging up across some of that summertime heat down there.
What are you watching as you turn your eyes to the Atlantic Ocean?
Still a wet weather pattern for much of the eastern Corn Belt. That big Brickyard race, I believe, on Sunday. And there may be some issues regarding rainfall, which continues its way into the mid-Atlantic region. A couple of showers into the northeast of New England, some patchy frost northwest. Yes, this is a cool, moisture-laden air mass, and a lot of these fields in the eastern and southern Corn Belt are sitting in a lot of water. Western sections too, but it is drier here, building with time here. Still some shower activity across the northeast of New England, and patchy frost across the Badger State middle and late portions of the week. The showers and thunderstorms coming out of Texas in through the Delta region, Tennessee Valley, heavy and severe. We've made significant inroads to the dryness and drought here and beginning to see the wet weather season get going down across some of the worst drought areas of Florida into the middle and late parts of the week. We've got still this trough moving into the southeastern states. Showers and thunderstorms, welcome moisture down through Florida. Watch for some severe weather into the Outer Banks and points on westward. Again, drought improvement. Meanwhile, cooler, dry air across the lower Mississippi Valley and a nice field of outdoor work scouting those winter wheat fields are heading quickly across the southern plains.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Across rural America, it's no surprise. It can be a challenge to find quality healthcare solutions. They seem to be getting farther and farther between. Well, that's a known challenge for the industry, and some major players are working to improve the situation. Joining me today is Jace Wagner. He's the president and CEO of Compeer Financial. They've recently been a partner on a major healthcare expansion. And Jace, tell me, why is investment in this category so important in rural America right now?
Yeah, rural America has a lot of challenges. Healthcare tends to be one of those that rises to the top for everybody. And so since 2005, we've seen over 195 rural hospitals either close or go out of business. And so it is threatening our ability to serve rural America in a way to help our farmers and ranchers get care, help those rural communities continue to thrive. But it's a real issue out there, and it needs help and support.
I mean, that is a 20-year slide, Jace. What have been some of the major factors driving these closings?
Yeah, you certainly had different population changes. You had a lot of aging facilities that just couldn't keep up with the capital investment that's required in order to make those institutions work. And we've also had changes in reimbursement over time. Certainly some of the changes in the healthcare structure overall have created challenges, as well as labor and typical issues that you see in rural towns, finding good housing to support nurses and doctors and those type of issues. And so it's a collection of things, but it is certainly coming to a major type of crisis type of mentality.
That's a good point. It's not just one factor. There are many issues layered together. Now, of course, Compeer is part of the farm credit system across the United States. And tell us, what role does Farm Credit or Compeer have in this bigger negotiation?
Yeah, so Compeer Financial is designed to set up and support agriculture in rural America, really across the Midwest and across the nation. So we work as part of the farm credit system, but we support rural communities because they help support agriculture. And that's a key part of our mission and our ability to serve and be a sustainable operation on the long run. So we're investing been around 100 years, want to invest for that next 100 years, and having good quality healthcare and facilities that can support those populations is key to our thriving ability.
It certainly is. And of course, this is something we can talk about out here in rural America amongst ourselves and take steps to address it, or we can take it to Washington, D.C. And Jace, I understand you were recently over in D.C. talking to Congress. What was your message to the legislators there?
Yeah, a lot of what we're talking about is how do we build a rural capital team to help support rural America in the long run. So how do we come together as legislators, as capital providers, as public-private partnerships in order to support the long run? So we are specifically talking to the Congress about an Investing in Rural America Act, which Congressman Fishbach sponsored and has been bipartisan support really across the spectrum there. But it's designed to allow farm credit institutions and others to get involved in rural essential community facility financing. So Compeer has some limited ability to support that in today's world. We want to have a full-throated ability to support rural America really across the nation with the help of the farm credit system, local community banks, USDA, and others who want to get involved. And that's part of the thesis here. If we can get involved and put our money to work, we can help attract other investors that can really help support rural America in the long run.
Well, and I know we saw an example of Compeer putting your money to work, really being an anchor in a broader funding project, and that's the Midwest Medical Center. Can you fill us in on what happened in Galena?
Yeah, so a Midwest Medical Center is a great example of how we can bring this capital team to really support and create the outcomes we're looking for. It's a 25-bed hospital with a 57-bed nursing home that goes with it. It's serving as a regional hub for the Galena, Illinois area. They've been in that role for a long time, but needed to upgrade their facilities in order to maintain that level of care. They've since the expansion really upped their game. Their customer service levels jumped to the top 20 in the area. So really expanded. It added some new features as well. It created a fitness center, which then the community can be a participant in, and it creates opportunities for physical therapy and the things that go with, really strong care, not only at that moment, but beyond that to really create that lasting ability. So one of a couple other stats, it's a $35.5 million expansion. That's a big number in rural America, and that's why it needs support from both local community banks and other funders like Farm Credit in order to get those projects done. Usually one lender can't do it all.
I was going to say, let's get into a little more details on the financing because that is a big nut to cover in rural America. Compeer was a chunk of it, but talk about the team you put together, if you would.
Yeah, so it starts with Midwest Medical. They are a great partner in rural America, and they put up about $9 million to help fund the project. Then we partnered with a construction loan with local community banks and Farm Credit, and we did that as part of that expansion. And then USDA is stepping in to do the long-term financing, which really allows them to get a very attractive rate over a long period of time and keep that cost structure in balance as you go well into the future. So the combination of both, the community and the funder of Midwest Medical, as well as the banks that get involved, as well as USDA and the public-private partnership. That's how we can get this to work. And we can think if we can do this and get the authority from Congress, we think we can do it around the country and really throughout rural America.
That's fantastic. We have a deep, deep bench of expertise across rural America. Let's get them all on the field. Let's get them all working on the same team, and let's drive some success across rural America. Jace Wagner, President and CEO of Compeer Financial, thank you so much for taking the time to fill us in on this issue here this week.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting the issue, and thank you for allowing Compeer to be part of the solution.
Absolutely. And folks, don't go away. When we come back, we'll take a look at some new technology offerings from our good friends at Case IH. Leave it here.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back, everyone, to This Week in Agribusiness. Now, it's long been known that clean fuels offer environmental benefits, but a new study is out recently that shows they're also bringing dollars back to the farm gate. Joining me now to talk about it is Kate Shank. She's the Director of Regulatory Affairs with Clean Fuels Alliance America. And Kate, this new study sure shows some big figures working their way back into rural America as a part of clean fuel creation, doesn't it?
It does, yes. So it's great. Clean Fuels recently commissioned a study with global data and really looking at the economic impact of bio-based diesel in 2024. So the clean fuels industry generated $42.4 billion in total economic activity, which supported 107,400 jobs and paid about $6 billion in annual wages. And so again, that's based on 2024 actual data, which includes our 5 billion gallons of domestic production.
Wow, I mean, 42 billion, those are some really big numbers. And help me understand how much of that makes it back to the farm gate, or how is this impacting farmer productivity?
Yeah, that's fantastic. We saw really great numbers there. So if you look at our oilseed production data, which includes our soybeans, that supported 30,600 jobs and generated over $15 billion in economic activity last year. So that value straight from the land into the clean fuels supply chain. So the study really shows that our farmers and rural community is at the core of the industry. So great news there.
Absolutely. And of course, when we're talking about these big figures, fuel production is a key part of it, but there's more in the clean fuels ecosystem, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. So fuel production accounted for the largest share there, about $19.9 billion in impact and 41,500 jobs. But the study also showed strong contributions from oilseed processing with 8,600 jobs, and then from rendering about 12,700 jobs. So it's not just one part of the supply chain, it's the industry is touching the supply chain from farm gate to fuel pump.
Wow, and the soy oil part of it, the veg oil part of it's 8,500 jobs on its own. That is some big numbers there. But Kate, we've seen this growth over the past couple of years. These types of growth, they don't happen without some policy support. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So federal programs like the Renewable Fuel Standard and at the state level, the low carbon fuel standards really play a role in the success of the industry. So right now we're really working at the federal side with the agencies and the administration to make sure that the regulations that we expect really reflect the growth that we're seeing both in the fuel side and in the farm economy.
And that growth, as you look forward, Kate, you're optimistic about it continuing?
We are, yes. So the right policy support, we can grow the industry that benefits our ag economy, our fuel suppliers, fuel producers, and really bring jobs home here to the U.S.
Bringing jobs home and cleaning the environment, it's a win-win all the way around. Kate, if we've got folks who want to learn more about all Clean Fuels contributes to the United States, where would you send them for more information?
You can find us on our website at cleanfuels.org.
Cleanfuels.org. Kate Shank, Director of Regulatory Affairs with the Clean Fuels Alliance America. Thank you so much for talking with us this week and providing an update on the impact of clean fuels across the U.S.
Very good. Thank you.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Earlier in the program, meteorologist Greg Solier outlined the precipitation risks for next week. And Greg, it sounds like the Delta could be right in line for some rain.
Yeah, parts of the Ohio Valley as well. Just a little trickle-down effect of more rain for some of these southern and far eastern Corn Belt locales. And you're already sitting in some water, even some of these western areas as well. Wouldn't be surprised there's going to be a need for some replanting here. Going to have to figure that into the markets here. But with time, it is a drier weather pattern as you see into the northern plains. The flooding and severe shift southward here across the Tennessee Valley. Parts of the Mid-South don't need any more water through Kentucky and Tennessee. A lot of the southern Corn Belt and Mid-South area still assessing severe weather that came on through. And that'll be the story in the Mid-Atlantic region, Gulf Coast back through Texas, scattered across the Intermountain West and Pacific Northwest. The rest of the West relatively dry.
What are you watching for temperatures the week of June 8th?
The cold, if you will, relative to late May, still here across this part of the country into the first week of the month of June. But look at the warm to hot ridge welling up along the divide as far east as about the Missouri across the Gulf Coast area. And note the jet stream pattern arcing northward, dropping southward. That's kind of the position going forward here, I think, for the next 2 or 3 months, maybe. In any event, showers and thunderstorms into the Canadian Prairie for the spring grain areas across the Great Lakes into the northeast and New England. Back to more normalized moisture into the heart of the country with expanding dryness across the southwest and through Texas as well.
By the week of June 9th, is that hot ridge moving east?
It's there. Get used to it. Again, we're going to build it in kind of like from a northwest to southeast orientation, so you're not getting a lot of this south wind and higher humidity and dew points. This will be a warm to hot and dry air mass that builds on in. For some areas, welcome. Others, maybe not. In any event, that's the story. Normal temperatures over the east into the Rio Grande. Still warmth across the western reaches of the country, where here comes the expanding dryness into the northwest, into the plains. Wet weather down through Texas, the southeastern states, and still a couple of strong storms, probably derecho type, into the eastern lakes, the northeast of New England.
So that ridge is still in place by the week of June 16th.
Here you go. Welcome to almost summertime. It's there and holding and beginning to build on to the east. The cool air into the northeast of New England, and expanding dryness and drought too will begin to the story across the plains and Corn Belt locales from west to east as we move through the summertime season.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of highly effective and efficient high-speed discs and land rollers. Visit brandt.ca for more. If there's a noteworthy event happening in the world of agriculture, chances are pretty good that a Farm Progress editor will be on hand. And that was the case last week for the Wheat Quality Council's Hard Winter Wheat Tour. Jennifer Ladsky, senior editor of Kansas Farmer, was along for the tour. And Jennifer, thanks for talking with us this week.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the Wheat Tour. What is it? What's the purpose for it?
So the Hard Winter Wheat Tour has been going on for 67 years, and they take color-coded routes across the state of Kansas, starting in Manhattan, going all the way over to Colby in the west, and then down to Wichita in the south central, and then back up to Manhattan. And along the way, carloads of participants will measure the crop using yardsticks and USDA NASS measurements, calculations, and they will calculate the potential yield of the crop at that day that they are in the field. The wheat tours are a really great opportunity to get out and evaluate the crop condition, evaluate the yield potential that's out there, and also educate some folks along the grain chain that may not be familiar with wheat. And so we have a lot of millers, a lot of bakers, a lot of international folks that buy our product, and they come along for the wheat tour and they meet wheat farmers and they see wheat fields in Kansas.
It's always good to tell that story of ag from the full picture. And Jennifer, what'd you learn on the tour this year? How is that wheat crop looking?
So Kansas, of course, is the wheat state, and so we know wheat. And this year, it's a story of periodic drought in parts of the state that have affected the wheat at its development stages, at critical development stages. So we see some wheat that will produce a crop. It's just not as much as we thought we would, as we thought we would have. Also, another large story coming out of this is wheat streak mosaic virus. And that virus is something that's not toxic to humans. It just affects the yield of the crop and how our kernels look when they come out of harvest.
So I know we've got that challenge brewing, but we might also see higher protein levels. Is that right?
Yes. So another a really great story idea out of this, or another highlight coming out of the tour, is some of the farmers that may have had failed corn crops or other crops last year, that nitrogen was still in the soil when they went to plant last fall. And then they also applied nitrogen as they would for their wheat crop. And so that crop has a lot of excess nitrogen to use to boost the protein content in the kernels. And so that's something that is a positive note for farmers, a positive note for wheat farmers, because they can get paid on those quality measurements.
Absolutely, be able to capture a little premium that way. Jennifer, before we let you go, where can folks go to read all of your reporting?
Sure. Come visit us at kansasfarmer.com, and I'll see you on the road, folks.
Jennifer Ladsky, thank you so much for talking with us this week.
Thank you.
Now, on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. We sure have been fortunate to visit so many great small towns across the United States, and memories flood back when we go there a second time. That was the case the other day when we passed through Maryville, Missouri. I'll talk about it and some tractors there. And Max's Tractor Shed brought to you by Lundell Plastics in another great town in the heart of the country, Odebolt, Iowa. It's where Vance Lundell makes his fine poly plastic products for agriculture, for grain and livestock producers. Check out the lineup of products they have, LundellPlastics.com. Maryville, Missouri. We were there just a few days ago, passing through that town of a little more than 10,000. It's the home of Northwest Missouri State University. Maryville sits up the road about an hour and a half north of downtown Kansas City in that northwest part of Missouri. And as you come into town on Main Street, you'll go past Todd Hill Ford Lincoln Mercury. We were there 9 years ago, and I got to see Todd Hill's Case tractors. He grew up with them, he told me. And you look behind the dealership today, as we did the other evening, those tractors are still there. There's a J.I. Case 930, and I admired that tractor because as a younger man, I spent a little time on one. Dad dispatched me one summer to help a neighboring farmer, and I plowed wheat stubble with a 930. That tractor was made for about a decade in Racine, Wisconsin, beginning in 1960, delivering 80 horsepower on the PTO, 70 on the drawbar. A lot of folks liked that J.I. Case 930, including Todd Hill, who is the Ford Lincoln Mercury dealer for about 17 years now, I think, at Maryville, Missouri. Well, let's see what Mark Stock is selling this weekend. We don't know if there are any Case tractors or not, but we'll see what's moving across the block of the week ahead at Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. First and foremost, we wish everybody a very happy and safe Memorial Weekend. And let's remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice so we can enjoy the freedoms that we have here in the U.S. of A. On Tuesday, May the 27th, Craig and Derek Johansson equipment located by Charter Oak, Iowa. Includes a 2007 Case IH 2588 axial flow combine. 2015 John Deere 8320R mechanical front tractor with 2,831 hours. 2010 John Deere 7330 premium mechanical front tractor with a loader. Case IH 7140 Magnum tractor. On Wednesday, May the 28th, Max Hewling from Forgan, Oklahoma will sell a John Deere S670 combine, John Deere 4038 self-propelled sprayer, John Deere 8360R tractor, the Michael Stoll Estate from Kelowna, Illinois, 237 items, Caterpillar Challenger 55 track tractor, Caterpillar 320 BL excavator, CAC D6H dozer, Link belt crane, Case skid steer, Caterpillar mini excavator. And Max, we sell boats and campers on Big Iron. Have a great Memorial Weekend.
Our FFA chapter tribute is brought to you by Geringoff. Check out the new XFR50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Geringoff.com. Geringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. This week, we're getting to know the immediate past president of the California FFA, Camille Zavala, recently retired. And Camille, thanks for coming out of retirement to talk to us this week.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about what prompted you to get involved with FFA in the first place.
Well, to be honest, I joined my ag classes on accident. I was looking for an elective to fill my schedule, but I come from a very agriculturally based area, and so that seemed like the right move for me because it had a clear pathway throughout high school. I joined by accident, and then my ag teacher really just hooked on to me and encouraged me to get involved, and that's kind of how I got started.
And so you clearly got involved in leadership over the years. What all was it about leadership at FFA that seemed appealing to you?
Well, it was somewhere where I finally found my voice, and that was kind of encouraged out of me. I had never really found a clear spot for myself in high school, especially coming out of COVID. I wasn't entirely sure what that was going to look like for me. And so when I had a teacher that encouraged me to find my voice and said, like, there's a place for you and we want you here and we really think that you should encourage this in yourself. I totally just bought into it. It felt right.
That's fantastic. And of course, your term has just ended as the leader of California's FFA. What was one of the highlights for you?
Well, we get to do a lot of traveling. We're traveling for roughly 300 of the days out of the year of our year of service, and my team actually all lives together in a house. And so I got to meet a lot of different kids all throughout the state that have a lot of different stories, and seeing how diverse our state really is was super cool.
That is fantastic. Well, Camille, thank you so much for your service to agriculture, and we wish you the best of luck as your career moves forward.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. This week, Chad Colby's out on the road, checking in with friends of his who made adjustments to their planter years ago. Maybe it's time for a change.
So it's not uncommon to talk about the latest in planter innovation, and over the years, Trax was kind of a big deal to add to your planter maybe 10 years ago, and now it's time for some upgrades. And you know what? You may be just washing your planter and putting it away, or maybe you're thinking about next year already. My good friend Randy Oberle was talking to me about when they started servicing their planter last winter, they realized that maybe they needed to do a little bit more than service on the Trax on their planter. Randy, talk about kind of your history with Trax. You've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, we've had 2-track tractors for a long time in our operation, 20 plus years. And then when we bought this 24-row planter back in 07, that was our first planter with bulk fill. And, now you got more concentrated weight in the front. And so a few years after that, we decided to put Trax on the planter, help spread that weight out, gets away from pinch rows because there's just 2 tracks where it's just affecting one side of a row on either side, and rather than pinching rows and whatnot. And so it, we've been very pleased with them over the years. They're definitely more maintenance than wheels, and more expensive, but we like the benefits of them.
Talk a little bit about these new ones.
This past winter, we went to service them and realized they were
tired?
A little more tired than what we thought they were. And so rather than rebuild them, we opted to go new. These new ones, we went with 22-inch belts, give us a little bit bigger footprint. We're still far enough away from the row that we're not dealing with gauge wheels on treads and things like that. The new hubs are now oil bath, and there's just been a bunch of overall upgrades to them in the 10-15 years since the first set went on.
Well, Randy, thanks for giving us an update on Trax. Certainly, I think at every farm show you go to, there's always a display with the latest Trax system. Even this, it looked to me like it was a pretty simple installation too. It didn't take much to put them on, I would think.
Yeah, it was a couple bolts, pull stubs out and slide them in. And the biggest challenge was just getting them tracked correctly, and which that goes in any track tractors that way too.
Right. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. And folks, stick around. We'll dig into some of the newest technology from Case IH after this. It was a sunny day on the Illinois-Indiana state line when I had the chance to get out in the field with Clay Abbott, who took a break from planting to talk to me about how technology is changing the way he manages his operation.
So we're corn and soybean row crop operation located in Momence, Illinois.
Clay is the third generation to run the farm, started by his grandparents in the 1950s.
Now, as I was looking around, there's a lot of red paint on the farm here. You've been happy with the equipment from Case IH?
Yeah, so my grandpa started out being Case IH, when I was a kid all the time, and we've continued that on. Always had good service with them and good products, and continued on. So we're not ones to change if it's working well.
One of the products that is working well for his operation is Field Ops from Case IH.
Field Ops is a operational management tool designed by Case IH. When we talk about a farming operation, we're talking about understanding where your equipment is, what it's doing, how much fuel does it have, how much time is left in the task that you're doing.
Now that Field Ops, that new combination from Case, bringing all that technology to your phone, to your iPad, Have you used that yet here on your operation?
Yeah, I use it honestly quite a bit more than I thought I would. Having multiple units running at a time and knowing which fields they're in and fuel levels, depth levels, things like that, knowing when we're going to need to hit them with that, and then also knowing when they're going to be reaching that next field and when they're completing the one they're in. And just being able to know what's going on with all the machines running.
For those folks who maybe aren't used to working with multiple operations, multiple tractors in a field at the same time, how did you used to have to keep track of these things, and how has field ops changed it?
Cell phones, which we all know can be a little bit challenging at times with signal and things like that, the old two-way radios and things like that. But this way I don't need to bother the guys if they're out of the cab or can't hear their phones, things like that. I can check in and know where they're at. Or the guy that's running fuel around could just know, hey, I got to go to this guy next. He's down under 20% and needs fuel. So
takes a little less oversight off your mind if he can just know where to go because he can see it.
I would agree with that. And then the guys being able to have the fields pulled up on their phones or in the monitors and knowing, hey, this is where I'm going. I'm in the right field. This is the one that I need to be doing. Being able to see the previous crops and knowing that, okay, yeah, this is a corn-on-corn field. I need to be in this one.
And so far, in your use, you're pleased with it? It's going in the right direction for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like it's been a game changer to go into these 1,200 monitors. Has brought Case into a new level of the technology.
For farmers interested in this new level of technology, you can learn more online at caseih.com or by visiting your local Case IH dealer. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness. Have a great one, everybody. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.